academician, the world-renowned Reverend Dr. Phil Delong. Yay!
Thank you, Cynthia, for the introduction. Good morning. Welcome to Casadega.
Good morning.
What I'm going to talk today is about changes and changes in our life. So changes is about embracing change and the constant evolution of our identity, both personally and in society. Spiritually, we confront unfamiliarity and adapt to life's shifts. It's the way of life, believe me. So, turn and face the strange changes. And that was a David Bowie song. And what it means to his listeners is to meet new experiences head on and accept the inevitability of transformation. Consider the changes in your life. How many homes have you lived in? And believing moving is not easy, okay? How many towns or cities have you lived in? How many occupations have you had? How many health challenges have we gone through? Changes are stressful, but they are character building. Everyone experiences changes in life. Teens cannot go through puberty without noticing changes in themselves and those around them, even if their body clocks are a little different. Changes affect us physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Changes happen every day, and how we react and adjust is a true test of our character. In the Bible, Romans 12, or chapter 12, verse 2 states, "Don't become like the people of this world. Instead, change the way you think. Then you will always be able to determine what God really wants. What is good, pleasing, and perfect." Neville Goddard states that our imagination are thoughts from God. And through our imagination is where we receive our creativity. So think of your imagination as those thoughts from God. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 22 to 24 states, "You were taught to change the way you were living. The person you used to be will ruin you through desires that deceive you. However, you were taught to have a new attitude. You were also taught to become a new person, created to be like God, with a life that truly has God's approval and is holy." Now, when I teach classes in Casadega, I tell people that I'm not really teaching them anything that they don't already know. And all I'm teaching them is to remember who they are, because they're a child of God, and the infinite intelligence resides within us. Recently, I ran into a woman I hadn't seen for a couple months. I hardly recognized her. Her hair, usually blonde, had turned completely white. The transformation was dramatic. She looked like a different person. But all it took was 40 minutes and some bleach. Okay? All right? So my point there is transformation does not come overnight. So when we use the word transformation, we often refer to it as ascension, in reference to elevating the human consciousness into higher dimensional frequencies and realities. We can look at it in terms of, and you've all heard this, 3D, 4D, and 5D consciousness. Humanity has operated at 3D consciousness for centuries. As humanity evolves, we are moving into higher states towards the 5D. When we look at the 3D consciousness, these are low, dense vibrational frequencies that operates in duality and separation. People look at things from a linear perspective and only understand what they see and touch as being reality, right? I used to have an Uncle Dave, and you might as well have called him Mr. Jones, because he was the one always keeping up with Mr. Jones. He would have the best of everything, stereo equipments, TVs, and when we look at that, that is the 3D consciousness that he was living with. And 3D, more or less, is the survival of the fittest, and you are identified by the way you look, the things you have, the car you drive, etc. And in 3D, causes can lead to extremism, right? And way back when Yes came out with the song Don't Kill the Whale, then you would see all these extremists going up to the Japanese whaling boats and machine gunning them. And that's the extremism. That is something in 3D we have to avoid. Okay, in 3D consciousness, there are many programs that condition the human mind to operate in that state, right? TV commercials are a prime example of that. And when that is happening, spiritual awakening is handicapped. Then when we go to 4D consciousness, which is the gateway to 5D, it still operates in duality, but it is the beginning of recognizing ourself. 4D consciousness begins to awaken you to the idea that you are connected and there is more to life than what meets the eyes. All right? And when I say 4D consciousness resides in duality, all religion operates in 4D, because there are many paths to the source, but there is sometimes the best and the only way. We had a teacher in Casadega here when he had a class, and he would come in and say, "You have knowledge. You don't. You have knowledge." And then he's teaching 5D concepts, but he's still teaching or acting in that 4D reality. So what we call 4D is often referred to as self-awakening. That is when we become aware of the larger things in life. Spiritual change requires desire. We need to ask ourselves, do I really want to change? Or am I content to remain as I am? How important is it for me to be in earth and in heaven? What price am I willing to pay to go through the transformation and be spiritual? Right? What actions am I willing to take? I had a mentor called Willard Fullard, and as he would say, when you're doing your spiritual path, it's like with that awakening to the awareness from 3D to 4D, you're going up an incline. And as every step that you take on that incline, people are going to fall out of your lives because they can't match your vibration. And you don't want to step backwards when you make that spiritual awakening and the awareness of where you want to be on your soul path in this lifetime. So we have to have the emotional fervor and that spiritual desire to go where we want to go. And I usually tell people it's what drives you? What is your passion? And a lot of people say, I don't know. And my response to them is, what makes you happy? Right? There's your passion, and that's what you should be following. Right? So until you get there, don't quit the day job. All right? All right, so when we get to 5D consciousness, that resides in love and neutrality. There is no duality, there is no bad or good. There is no competition in 5D, and we know there is enough in the universe for everyone. You feel overwhelming emotions of love and compassion for life, Mother Earth, and the stars. In this space, we are free from conditioning and live in oneness with ourselves and others. And that's where we want to be. Peace, love, and brotherhood. Right? I grew up Catholic, so they did a bit of a shift from the 60s, which was hellfire and brimstone, to peace, love, and brotherhood in the 70s. So, but that's where we want to go. To be, well, I guess when you shift to the 5D, you're going to become an empath, whether you like it or not. So, and in some cases, we have to put boundaries around us. So what we call 5D then is known as self-mastery. And this would include self-awareness and self-discipline. And we will create the peace on earth. True spiritual change is initiated and enabled by the indwelling of spirit. It is all of grace, which we receive as we persevere in humility and guided by faith. Transformation in spiritual living is not a matter of trying harder, but rather of walking in the reality of a supernatural change that already has taken place. Spiritual discipline are concrete activities that we engage in order to make ourselves available. Excuse me. All right. The change that we make ourselves available for spiritual harmony. My mentor, who is a medium here, Dr. Thomas, would say, called this part of spiritual discipline, service, service, service. And if you really fell off the path, your spiritual path, he would give you penance. All right? All right. So our spiritual disciplines occurs by living and practicing the golden rule, which is our spiritual principle number 6. Do unto others as they would do unto you. If you look at the golden rule in the 5D oneness perspective, then it transforms into do unto others and make the world a better place. Or, as my guide John Lennon would say, imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. So when we look at the golden rule, one way to have our spiritual discipline is through almsgiving, and that's acts of charity and compassion, and involves giving to those in need. So personally, when you live the golden rule, reflect on how others make you feel. Think about the times that others have treated you well. Maybe they made an extra effort to help you when you were struggling. But then also reflect on the negative things that you had arguments with a person for, and think of how people hurt you with their words. Because when they hurt you with your words, it's hard to take back. So we have to reflect and recognize how we're going to use that golden rule to make the world a better place. And then we have to pay attention to the people around us so we can understand them better and be more empathetic towards them. So paying attention is something that is really important, and it goes beyond a person. It goes beyond the whole community, like Cassadaga here. How can we make Cassadaga a better place? And you can contact the office or Daryl for being a volunteer. Just putting a plug in for you. So, all right? Okay, but living the golden rule is be considerate of others. That means concentrating on the other person's perspective, feelings, and experience. Don't judge people unless you're walking in their shoes. You can ask yourself, how can I treat them compassionately in a way that they will appreciate? How can I treat others fairly or justly while still remaining kind? One of the misnomers that I have had on my spiritual path is that spiritual work is hard or difficult. And this is not definitely the case. And I usually tell people now, nobody said spiritual work has to be hard. It may be uneasy going through the 3D to 5D shift. And you must have faith in yourself and spirit and believe in your supernatural abilities. But that's the shift. That's the changes we're going through. We need to make the world a better place. And you have to remember, the only constant in the universe is change. All right, so I'll conclude with changes. Turn and face the strange. Time may change me, but you can't trace time. Thank you for listening.